But it's time for the main series, the highlight event of our Sunday. Vortix versus Beasty starts now.
This is one of the most back and forth matchups of AOA 4 when you look at the elite players. Currently, it's 6 and 7 when it comes to the sets. Vortix has the lead with 7 wins. But more importantly, when you look at this year, it is 3 and 1 in the favor of Vortix. 2-0 for Vortix in Elite Classic. Beasty took Vortix out in Real Crown Streamers Cup 2-0. But they've met twice in Golden League, and Vortix won both. So this year so far, this has been a matchup that has been favoring Vortix. It's going to be interesting to see how Beasty approaches this set knowing this.
That's an incredible stat line for Vortix. I mean, if it was just Golden League, I would have discounted it and said that doesn't matter, right? Because Golden League had some varying rules that really required quick adaptation. In fact, that's where we saw Vortix and Lucifer dominating that tournament because they were so quick to come up with these creative strategies. In the more traditional setting, I think that's where it's a more even matchup, right? Beasty, he kind of embodies the traditional meta. It doesn't surprise me when you consider, he's always up there in the top 3 or top 4 on the leaderboards, and he's always ranking high in these tournaments. He becomes one of those meta setter type players. But between these two, we highlighted a little bit at the start of the day. Vortix tends to be more aggro, I'd say, more of a potential all-in player versus Beasty that I'd say is more comfortable with the idea of those later phases of the game. But when you see him open with a pick like the Ottomans, it suggests to me that we're looking for a fast end, whether it's by forcing a lot of pressure in Feudal or potentially going for one of those very cheeky but fast castle Ottoman builds.
This is one of those matchups where Beasty is going to have to bring out the big guns. Not necessarily because he must win here. Even if he loses, he's going to have a reasonable chance of getting into the playoffs. As we discussed in the pregame, the loser of this set is matching up against Magic in the final round. Now, I think the big thing here for Beasty, and same goes for Vortix, is knocking down one of the playoff rivals into an elimination spot for for next Saturday, so that it's not you who has to fight for survival, but your rival. And, you look at Beasty and let's say, okay, I'm bringing out Ottomans. I'm bringing out some of my hidden strats even, because I want to take a chance at eliminating Vortix by taking him down today, and then hoping that Magic knocks him out next week.
I wouldn't even call this necessarily hidden for Beasty. I mean, he can be formidable in the Ottomans. I still remember watching him on the opening weekend up against Noosh, where he was able to, in Ottoman Mirror, smash a fantastic Castle Age timing and then out-micro his opponent. I think we could see something similar here. I do like Vortix opening with this military wing. It's a cool idea against the Ottomans because you know that they're going to go for those free produced spearmen, right? So you just immediately get the counter of the archers, chase them, and then try to harass on the other side. The other layer to this cake that makes it an interesting matchup is if you're playing into Ottomans in a prolonged feudal, they're going to get that attack speed buffer, right? That's a huge advantage. The only sort of counter advantage you can get as the Abbasids is going melee wing. Then you get access to boot camp, which will pad the HP pools of your units.
Yeah, no surprise so far. It's the twin minaret as opposed to the military wing over here. Military wing should spawn the archers that do get rid of these spearmen. Question is, how do you follow this up for Vortix? I feel like as much as you will have that early tempo advantage when it comes to harassment with the spears and archers, if you want to go greedy multi-TC here, you gotta be very cautious against Ottoman aggression.
Because that's the thing, like, this is the frustration of the Ottomans. Like, if your plan is kind of like prolong the feudal but be greedy, I think Ottomans is one of the better civs at dealing with that because they just start massing ridiculous numbers and have that attack speed aura. Remember, that attack speed aura is very difficult to shut down because of how high HP those metas are, right? Like, I think it's 210 still. Not something you could easily snipe into.
It's also problematic for the Abbasids because they love to play into their own archers with composite bows once you get to mid-game. But against the Ottomans, it's not so straightforward because Ottomans will be more than happy playing into their own archers with a meta buff.
Yeah. And actually, no, sorry, I'm thinking camels type stuff. It's, I think it's 160, right? I'm glad they eventually tweaked that a little because I remember when the meta first came out as a fixed variable. I think it was 180 or something. But still, like, it's so hard to snipe them. And I like this follow-up. Beasty now getting to the Sipahi. Nice little bit of harassment coming out from Vortix, who did invest in traditional spears. Just a perfect read here. It feels like Ottomans, when they first emerged, it was that ridiculous archery range spam build. But nowadays, I feel like it's not as popular of an opening. People tend to lean into the Sipahi because of that buff they got with their attack range.
Yeah, Sipai is such a power unit, and obviously it creates a need from the other side to start making spearmen, and that plays into the Ottomans' hands because at the end, Ottomans do want to go for that big ball of archers. This is such a range-dominated meta recently, not just with the Ottomans, but with all civs. So having the Sipahi out there as a tool of harassment and as a tool of forcing out spearmen, it gives it great value.
And we are getting a burn down the house. A little bit frustrating for Beasty. So was that thing when you want to be kind of max efficient, but as a result, you're building these structures out towards the gold veins that in a lot of these matchups we see players forfeiting. Walls are going to go up like this from Beasty. It actually triples the patrol time for Vortix to get around to the other side because of that double forward spawn of wood for the Ottoman player. So, knows about the second TC. Vortix, there's no great TC placement here. Wow, he's actually going for the gold. So this could be a fast castle build out of the Abbasids.
I wouldn't be against that, come to think of it. You unlock so many options when you get to Castle Age. Talk about composite bows, talk about the ability to make mangonels on the field, that could be a big thing. And in general, it takes some time for the Ottomans to ramp up this military pressure. It takes some time for them to leverage the military scores, to get that big ball of units that they can strike you with. And if you rush Castle Age, you will have some armored units, the Ghulams to work with. You will have some Lancers to work with, Siege to hold against this. And indeed, it looks like a very defensive game so far by Vortix. He's walling off the sides, love that. Would love to see some walls on the left flank as well. But surprisingly, Beasty is walling as well. So both players setting up some defensive entrenchments early on.
No, Beasty put that pretty early. That small wall was simply to invalidate Vortix hanging around. Because, like, if you think about it, if that's open, he can keep weaving the tree line. But with that in place, he has to walk all the way around both tree lines to keep his units in. So it's just Beasty kind of min-maxing this great spawn for him. And now he should just be fully offensive, especially when he sees Vortix doing this. Like the Great Wall of the Abbasids are not a well-known monument because real life it didn't get built. But in this game, it will be a great tool to buffer away any sort of raids. Unless you get one of those stupid spawns where your TC is one tile out of covering the tree line.
Even if it was in range, the units could have just run past it. This is a good move from Beasty, and now you see these villagers are kind of trapped on the outside.
This worked out perfectly, as intended. Vortix strokes his chin and goes, yes, all according to plan here. This less so. You don't want to go back in, Vortix.
Oh. One villager goes down.
But it hurts.
It does hurt, because you want to pull ahead in the eco department. Every single villager that you lose at this initial phase of this economical expansion is amplified.
Wow, Beasty. He could just stick on this kind of count and maybe be greedy himself, but I've got this feeling he's going to kind of double down on the aggression, at least go up to, like, 25, 30 military cap, see if there's a reaction. Because he has forced exactly that out of Vortix. Not a great position to find yourself in when you build your second TC on the gold vein, that now you have to play a longer feudal.
Some horsemen now being mixed in by Vortix. His army isn't very convincing, to say the least, but it's enough to hold back Beasty for the time being. And that's kind of the goal right now for Vortix. He's just trying to buy some time to get those walls going. And so far, it's working out well. You see this one spearman. I don't know what he's up to here, but he's going to get picked off. And Beasty hasn't really been able to put up much pressure on the actual eco. Just a couple of villagers harassed on the walls, that's it.
Oh my god, he actually can't even see them yet. By the time he sees them, he might, like, pick a villager or two. He'll try for the surround. Archer's a little bit unguarded here. We'll target the spearman. And this is a rough matchup for Vortix. Remember the Sipahi, they have additional attack range. They've now got an attack speed buffer. This is a hard fight for Vortix to get unless you can get the spearman on top of them or get a camel archer. But camel archers aren't great against the comp that BC's running, as he's maxing out on archers. Wait, did he just... Was that through the wall?
I actually don't know, but it might have been.
What?
Felt like
I
Vortix
know
tried
they
to save
got
it.
buffed, but
Yeah.
like the range didn't get buffed that much. Sapahi? Well, it's Sapahi, but all right. I guess he just like yeeted the spear over the wall. I don't know. I think we've got like Dunzo Sapahis now.
Yeah, Beasty is ramping up that military count though. Look at that. It's now 2-1. And Vortix doesn't have a lot of resources to spare to turn into army. Siege engineering on the way for Beasty. I feel like Vortix doesn't have enough to hold this with.
This wood line's so uncomfortable right now. I mean, he's desperately trying to get whatever he can. Like, food sources are going to exhaust fast. Like, Beasty's got to have a smile on his face. This is kind of cruise mode. I don't think that a 7-villager lead is good enough to overcome the quality of Beasty's army in conjunction with the passive production he's benefiting from.
Yeah, it's the raw numbers by themselves, but also the fact that you have the matter buff. So this is actually more than like a 50% advantage for Beasty when it comes to numbers. This feels like a much more overwhelming army. And the Lumberjacks are exposed as well. Oh!
I mean, that's just a little warning to Vortix says, bro, just in case you didn't know, this wood line is no longer safe. And the ram is now being built. This is kind of curtains closed potentially for Vortix. He needs to take a really good fight here, but I cannot emphasize this enough. Sapahi will rinse the horsemen. While you have to run around your front line to attack, the Sapahi will attack over each other. That's why they're great raiders on the villages like this as well.
Here comes the battering ram, and the villagers have been pushed away from the wood. Vortix does not have a stable wood income right now, and that's kind of limiting him in army production. You see, very few units are queued up here for Vortix.
Ram left on its own, so horsemen try to pick it up unsuccessfully. The wood line has to migrate to the north side here. Second ram coming in. These houses alone are going to be a pain in the ass. Vortix hasn't built additional ones yet. Remember, he's very limited on wood because of the migration of this wood line. Oh, counter raid coming in. Villager will be sold out by the Sapahi. What a douchebag. Now, just 2 Sapahi should be enough to push this away because Vortix can't afford to lose a single unit at this stage of the game. The Rams are shuffling in. Horsemen are going to try to grab them, but it's so difficult. Third Ram now coming in. Beasty's making it look so trivial.
He's dancing back and forth, keeping those horsemen out of range. At least the blacksmith survives until the upgrades come in for Vortix, so upgrades are right now dead even. But now you're losing that building as well. And look at this. Vortix distracted, not paying attention to the horsemen, loses a lot of precious units there. And the only tool that he had to kind of distract Beasty with.
Yeah. The funny part is, like, Beasty's kind of been given a little bit more wiggle room than Vortix even deserves here. He could have been closer with the archers to protect faster, right? And then these Rams aren't even this much damaged, right? Because you just lose a horseman to this many archers instantly. The housing is just frustrating. Vortix now needs to build additionals there. 4th Ram coming in. I think Beasty's going to try to, like, escalate towards 6 Rams and then go for, like, an all-in play here. And it's worrying because Vortix is struggling to keep up on numbers in a situation where his food reserves aren't getting any better. I think the berries are about to exhaust. After that, it's only deer, and then you are out.
Yeah, he had to relocate his lumberjacks as well. Missed out on a lot of precious production. But as you said, as he's running out of berries, as he's running out of hunt, it's going to be more and more difficult to sustain production. And on the other side, you're looking at a player that is getting a lot of units for free now. So the efficiency is getting better and better for Beasty, and that's alarming for Vortix.
Archers moving in. This is the commitment point. 4 Rams onto the second town center. Vortix, his own TC is working against him. He cannot engage here. It's just going to be a wash. He loses it straight away. Has to retreat out. His production building's now on the front line. That is perfect for Beasty. He's going to raise hell here. Rams taking out the stables. Archer Rangers, anything they produce is just going to die. As Archers will pick them off. And without production, without a second TC, you haven't got a leg to stand on in this matchup. He has to take a fight. It's now or never for Vortix.
He's losing so much infrastructure, though. Even if he survives this, he lost the second TC. He's losing houses. In fact, he is right now housed. He's losing production buildings, and he's outnumbered almost 2-1 when you also factor in the effect of the matter. It feels near impossible for Vortix, I must say.
Not just a meta, 3 metas. You can't even get rid of the attack speed or a Vortix. I mean, honestly, this is like trying to just paddle up a river without a paddle. The Rams have found their value. And Beasty will not be denied. Military lead, undeniable in itself. I don't really know what Vortix is holding on for here. Maybe a disconnect? Like maybe Beastie's internet's a bit shaky tonight. Could maybe get me a win. I'll take it.
He's doing the right thing. He's waiting for that critical mass for him to build up. But obviously, he doesn't see everything on the map. He doesn't see that Beastie has a much larger army than his. He's looking at this and saying, okay, I need a little more time to build up my numbers, take a decisive fight, but it's just dragging out too much. He has lost way too much infrastructure buffering this up.
Villagers now moving out. Archers say, yes, please. Don't mind if I do. Honestly, this is just looking too strong. Sure, the Rams are gone, but they can just be rebuilt up. At this stage, Beastie just renamed himself Jean-Claude Van Ram because this has just been unstoppable. I mean, the crazy part when you're defending like this and you're up against this many archers with mass melee is your own buildings work against you, right? You can't even get into snipe out rounds. I just love the way that Beastie played this.
Yeah, and now he's giving up on Rams. No more Rams. He's realizing that there is no more to destroy here when it comes to buildings.
Kill
he can just dive this, and he finally does.
He baits him in. The horsemen have to commit, but it's the worst fight imaginable. Attack speed will always remain there. Vortix will make his last stand before bowing out in game one as Beastie will take the first in this best of 5.
So clinical, so methodical. And this is why I was somewhat concerned for Vortix's position. 2 DC builds, they're powerful for the Abyssids, but their real power unlocks once you get to Castle Age. In Feudal Age, they're very vulnerable, and this is something that Beastie used so well. Confined Vortix into his base for the initial part of this, and then just committing to those Rams, taking down the second DC so quickly. Vortix was never given a good fight.
No, it's just pristine timing, right? Like, he sees the offensive attempt by Vortix, but after that phase of the game, it's just the full understanding from Beastie that this is a feudal all-in, right? You couldn't have actually claimed anything that's that worthwhile. It's one of the pesky issues with regions, right? The design of regions says you need to come out and claim the regions. If you try to play multi-TC at home, you're just getting wood. And what are you going to do with that wood? Are you really going to try to mass archers against the Ottomans? That's a losing formula right there. They have the attack speed, or you can't match that. On top of that, you're probably going to need that wood to eventually go into farms. It just becomes a starvation strategy, but fantastically executed nonetheless by Beastie. Opens with a strong win. We look to our next map. And it looks like we are going to see more Ottomans this time from Vortix. But Beastie taking a potent civ here in Dry Arabia. He's got the Delhi.
Feels like a rinse and repeat from Beastie. Like, when we talk about these matchups, one thing to note is that this is a hidden civ pick. Think about what Beastie did in this game. Aggressive, feudal age play off the back of a strong buff, the Matters. Now, you look at the Delhi, Tower of Victory Archers, some Ghazi Raiders, some Spears. It's kind of the same approach, similar style map, similar style approach taken by Beastie. Big difference is that Vortix has a very different civ than what he had in game number 1, and it makes it much more legitimate for Vortix to hold off a feudal age pressure.
And, you know, this is a matchup that we've seen a lot historically. For quite a while, I'd say it was Delhi favored. I need to double check. I think when it comes to more recently, the Ottomans have been winning more against the Delhi. There was a lot of adaptations that happened in the beginning of this year compared to like around Wall time when I'd say it was quite the wash. But given the way that we've seen Delhi playing, I feel like with the way that Ghazi has kind of changed, what should have been originally nerf kind of felt like a beneficial thing. Doesn't get huge value in the Ottoman matchup, but I think it's like this unit that can somewhat square up to Mass Sipahi. And we've still got to consider that timer that you can strain the Ottomans with, right? Playing towards those sacred sites. You might be able to just force critical fights ahead of a like mass point in the game where Ottomans have, 30, 40 archers and could just win. And also keep in mind that if you can start fights soon enough in this game as a Delhi player, because of that TOV build you're mentioning, you're immediately going to have an attack speed aura. Ottomans don't tend to get that coming into the picture until like 10 military units in when they get their first points.
It's also the fact that the TOV aura is something that you have permanently. Whereas when you look at the Ottomans, Sure enough, it's difficult to snap the matter, but it's not impossible, especially when you have fight after fight after fight. So, Beasty is going to have an option to remove that buff from Vortix, and that's not the same for Vortix. Plus, of course, as you said, being able to secure the sacred sites is a big thing, especially when you consider that that is something that gives immediate momentum for the Delhi. Whereas for the Ottomans, what they need is time. They need time to capitalize on the military schools. They need time to capitalize on the vizier points even, and that's not something that the Delhi will allow them to have.
Yeah, it's like it's weird because when Ottomans were first introduced, Delhi just kind of felt like a cut and dry, right? It was like it had a clean build order. It was very dominant at the time on maps like Dry Arabia, and Ottomans were still being figured out. But like in more recent times, Ottomans have kind of teeter-tottered off the power of their auras, right? And specific timings that got optimized across bumps. I think there's still a small window super early for like the Delhi. I'm curious to see how Beastie wants to play this. Like I think there's a strong instinct to open spears as the Delhi, but and maybe it's just me remembering the Canoosh series and me wanting to see it again. You could play into archers after baiting your opponent to go full melee and make those little quick walls to keep them out. I mean, if he finds a few sacred sites near wood walls, I actually think it's a decent play in this game.
Perhaps, although I doubt that we are going to see something like
I
that.
want the walls, damn it. Give me the walls.
Vortix, this is the first time he loses a game in this tournament, by the way, at the hands of Beasty. He was 9-0 so far. Now he drops one against Beasty. Beasty is still completely undefeated. And as we discussed, the Civilization matchup might also be favoring him. Let's see what we have for game number 2, though. I don't think there is much more to analyze over here before we actually see the maps and how the players will approach this. It is game number 2, Beasty with the 1-0 lead as we head to Dry Arabia.
Boy. Should be an interesting one to hop into here. Beasty, of course, taking that first game, showing us just how the Ottomans can destroy, unravel an opponent in 20 minutes. Let's see if Vortix took any lessons from that and can now return the favor. As we've got a little bit of green on green, but for once, it's not a mirror.
A lot is going to come down to... I know I'm overemphasizing sheep sometimes, but a lot is going to come down to how much sheep you actually get in this one. Sure, the Delhi want to go for the berries, but this is going to come down to whoever has more stockpiles to just keep on that onslaught in Feudal Age. And whoever has to start pivoting into farms first might end up losing the game.
And remember, the Beastie's playing one of those civs that doesn't need to give a schnapps about sheep immediately. He can drop the mill, he can immediately gather there. That's why he goes aggressive with his scouting. But I love what Vortix done here. He done something similar. He was able to drop a house to nab an additional sheep as well, which means that he won't get punished by lack of food for his wider scout pattern that would have netted him more sheep in the initial phase.
Yeah, for Beasty, it's all about denying that food from Vortix, and if he does that, if he can accomplish that, Vortix could be in a troublesome spot. You look at the hunts for a brief moment. If I'm not mistaken, both of them are fairly exposed. Sure enough, you have the minaret for the Ottomans, but that by itself isn't going to guarantee you a lot of food. And you see, indeed, both patches of hunt are quite exposed for Vortix.
They're very far out as well. It's actually crazy the amount of food that BC got to one location on the right side of his base. But it came at a price, right? If you look at Yellow's kind of formation here, which is about to scout out, all of his food is stored in one area. If he loses map control, he could also be starved out in this game. So what I like to see, man, I don't want to see a mirror, but I want to see both sides having exploitable weaknesses to their generation. Question is, do we finally get a Dome of Faith? I'm kidding, we're not going to get a Dome of Faith.
Absolutely not.
Move
Definitely
on,
not in this matchup.
Imagine if he did.
That would be some good memes, that's for sure. Minaret on the side of Vortix, and on the other side should be the TOV in a brief moment.
It's called Tower Victory for a reason. It's the only way to play here. Like, you know, you're going to be playing against an attack speed aura, you need to have your own, or it's just a complete wash. And there we go, TOV. little bit further out. That twin minaret madrasa is interestingly placed by Vortix. He placed it on the northwestern side. It puts it further away from any sort of frontal assault, but it does mean that his villagers should be gathering bushes further away from the town center.
Yeah, he put it as close as it is possible to the TC, though. So he definitely doesn't want those villagers to be picked off by Beasty. He knows that Beasty loves to dance around your eco and just chip away at villagers that are exposed, and he wants to minimize that on a very predictable spot for vills, that is the minaret. And look at that, some late sheep being found over here by Beasty. Some good value. Looks like neither of the players have scouted this flank yet.
I think he's looking away from the scout. I think the scout maybe would have just got a glimpse of that sheep, but it's on a tree line, so it's really annoying to see. But yeah, still a bunch of the map that he hasn't scouted. That's kind of the crisscross area, so now Vortix should be going into where can I buy a drink territory when you're actually in a Christian town, so there are no drinks. Should just try to scout in, I think. Like, see what's going to be coming as the tech up kicks through. Is this going to be like a 1/2 blacksmith opening? Are we immediately going to see a stable drop? My instinct is stables. Typically, Delhi players love to just open with the Ghazi Raiders. And then in this matchup, you kind of... I feel like you have to follow up archers. Spimming leaves you too one-dimensional and killable by mass archers, right?
Yeah, quite possibly. I feel like this is not a matchup of melee units. This is just going to be full-on range, especially knowing how good both of these players are when it comes to ranged micro.
Well, getting our first info. It's always interesting to me, Delhi, like, you know, when Delhi was the pinnacle of competitive, or as in it was dominating everything, you always got these very small, flavorful differences between players, like opening blacksmith first versus dropping the first military building, gave you slightly different timings around the sacred sites. Sometimes that was informed by like additional scholars. But I think nowadays, like the blacksmith opening can have more value just due to the slower tech up timings that you get by having less scholars compared to older builds.
Yeah, Beasty already has 2 scholars out there, as one would expect. Let's take a look at the production buildings, though, at the beginning. A lot is going to come down to those mind games.
There we go.
Yeah, there's a stable. We'll have a couple of Ghazi Raiders trying to hunt down that one scout, trying to force out some spears. And then on the other side, it's just going to be double military schools, meaning that Vortix won't have a massive standing army in the next few minutes.
He's giving Beasty initial control of the map at a phase in the game where he can't do anything with it. Sanctity hasn't been complete yet, so it's not like by giving over the map for 2 minutes, Beasty's going to net hundreds of gold. He's not going to get anything. And it's going to give you this more efficient timing where you're immediately getting the free units as opposed to needing to push out costly investments in this early phase.
Yeah, that's a great point. As you said, Beasty cannot really benefit from map control right now because he doesn't yet have Sanctity. But for Vortix, getting up those military schools early on and getting those free units being pumped out is a great value long-term. He wants to set himself up long-term first before starting to commit to mass units. He's going to start doing that as Beasty is getting ready to start securing the sacred sites.
Feels like Vortix's favorite cartoon is TMNT, because this is very turtly on the opening. Just spears, kind of forfeiting over control to Beasty initially. Interesting choice, like some people might try to counter with Sipahi. The reason he doesn't want to do that is like, you can't kill these units, right? You can out melee them because you can attack over your own units, but the issue is Beasty is a high micro player. He'll pull back the injured ones and send them home to a scholar. That's something you can't compete with if you're the Ottomans, unless you eventually go into the Imam, which shouldn't be your first point. If anything, it would be at least your second point investment.
I feel like you still want to go for the Matter first instead of the Imam, but yeah, we'll have to see. For now, it's just Ghazi Raiders for Beasty. Vortix is going for spears.
It's already paying off, right? He already sniped a villager. Like, this wood line already feels uncomfortably far away. And that's with Wheelbarrow. I mean, it feels like it should be happening, but no easy way to prevent it. Is that a distraction raider? He gets him away, and he went in again. There we go. That's exactly what he's looking for. Doesn't get a second villager. The formation actually protected Vortix the way the villagers engaged. But no Ghazi Raiders fallen just yet. As soon as I say that, one just died.
Beast is fine with that, though. I think he's more than happy doing this harassment and setting the tempo of the game. especially because he's harassing the Lumberjacks, making it more difficult to get those production buildings going. You see, Range is just now finishing here, stable barracks down as well for Vortix. Beasty scouted everything, so he knows exactly the distribution of production buildings that Vortix does have.
I think what you're going to see from Beasty is you're going to see another single Ghazi Raider on the east side of the base. The reason he started attacking that military school is it sent off a ping that distracted Vortix, and then he went in with the other group of Ghazis. It's a great exploitation of the alert system. I hope he's going to keep doing it because it's making it really uncomfortable in this game. Just parking on this gold alone is doing that because it means that Vortix can't even dream about leveraging his blacksmith for upgrades.
Good value here for Vortix, pushing away that one scholar from the central sacred site. So no sacred sites, well, aside from the one on the west for Beasty yet. But archers are being built, and Beasty does have the advantage right now when it comes to archer production.
This is just not enough spears. You just feel uncomfortable trying to take these trades. Ghazi numbers continue to escalate, but now the full transition to archers, so it's going to be mirrored. Something we already highlighted. One side does get the attack speed buff courtesy of a unit. The other just gets it by building. But one big edge Vortix can have is if he ever gets mass lead and he starts to win a fight, remember he's going to have that formation increased movement speed via the meta that will allow him to chase down.
One thing not to underestimate is blacksmith upgrades. Not something that Vortix does have just yet, and they are coming in for free for Beasty. He's just now going to get the ranged attack. And when you look at the fact that he even has the archer numbers advantage, or at least he had that a moment ago, it kind of feels like it's starting to swing in the favor of Beasty more and more come the next few minutes.
Spearman just trying to bait them in here, but the Ghazis get free reign. I mean, Vortix just needs to leave. It's going to cost you something. If you're not careful, it could end up costing you the meta. Because the pinch comes in, Beasty with a pinch. Doesn't finish off the meta, but he's good as dead if he chooses to engage here. Spearman will cover the retreat, but I mean, this is just uncomfortable. That meta being that low already, LidaKor, I don't think Vortix can actually defend easily here. He has to kind of give more ground.
That was a marvelous pinch by Beasty. Clear plan to snipe the Matter, and boy oh boy was he very close. If that Matter falls, we talked about this, Vortix will lose his attack buff, and Beasty will still have his from the Tower of Victory.
There it is, it's gone. He gets rid of it. You just need to back away from this. There's not that many archers from Beasty, but the Ghazi Raiders are the bigger issue here. There's just enough concave for them all to start attacking. And where are the spears? Vortix has been reduced down to 2. They only just spawned out. Villagers could now easily be in trouble. He doesn't pull them back, but they will be pulled to the afterlife. What a play. Beasty now with 3 sacred sites and up 5 villages over the Ottomans. And Vortix, no way to strike back. We'll call the GG. 2 on the board already for Beasty.
Boy, oh boy, is he playing on a different level right now. Beasty's execution is so good here, and he's playing an insanely high-tempo game. And he's doing that against one of the most accomplished players of AoE 4 history. The tempo at which he's playing, the tempo at which Beasty is playing, is just remarkable. We have seen 2 victories in quick succession. Neither of these games have lasted for more than 15 minutes.
I think Beasty's got somewhere to be. Maybe Warman wants to watch a movie tonight or something, but whatever it is, he's moving fast. I mean, this has been dominant. Big shout out, especially to Vodka. I don't know if he intentionally done that, but that wraparound being hidden by the zoom in made us all have a heart attack. The type of heart attack that you know Vortix would have been having at the time because he didn't have a scout in that formation. He didn't know that was coming. Just great denial of vision across the map into probed harassment on multiple phases, leading into a snowball effect very rapidly from Beasty. I mean, it's crazy to think just how few Ghazi Raiders he lost across the entirety of that game, just showing us exactly why that opening has become the de facto one for the Delhi.
And he knows fully well what he needs to do. Never mind. Forget that. There's something more important to talk about. What were you
after? Yeah, do you want to talk about this? Because this is...
Yup. Holy smokes. Man. What is Vortix up to here? He is just walking into the Lion's Den. This is probably Beasty's favorite map to play on. Beasty does have his favorite civ as well on Mountain Clearing. And Vortix is just like, okay, I challenge you with your best civ on possibly your best map to a mirror matchup. Now, Vortix either has something utterly big brain out here, or he's just going to be like, okay, let's fight this mano a mano, 1v1. You're just going crazy. I don't know. This could be either a complete disaster for Vortix or something spectacular.
You're kind of handcuffed now in this matchup. Like, you want to save English for Canal, so Vortex can't throw that out there. You don't have Mongols for Canal, so that's not a backup option. The other options like potentially Chinese, but I think HRE plays too fast here. They can either go Regnants and gather 2 relics for free, or they just rush Burgrave and with the initial deer near them because you're not playing an offensive civ because you're playing Chinese, they run you through. So it has to be an HRE mirror, but this is rough, man. I mean, Vortex, I think Vortex is one of the most scary HRE players on water hybrid maps. But he's now playing up against one of the, if not the most scary HRE player on land maps. And we're on a land map, a very tight, uncomfortable one. One where just one small slip up, one misstep, Beasty's going to fully maximize on that. The question is, are we looking at unlimited men at arms, or are we going to look at soaking in the greed? My instinct says Beasty's going to want that greed, but if Vortix shows signs of weakness for even a second, Beasty might be looking to make this 3 games, none over 15 minutes. But to do so, he's going to have to prove who the best HRE player is on mountain clearing.
Beasty is still undefeated in this tournament, now standing at 11-0. And he has just won 2 terrifyingly quick games against Vortex. And now Vortex is going into the Lion's Den. Beasty loves this map, and he always picks HRE here. He's moving out for the boar right away. Not something that Vortex has done.
Where did the boar spawn? The boar spawned south side, right? He didn't pull it that far. Oh, man. I'd have to double check that back. But considering like how quickly he was on it, I feel like it must have been a bit closer to him. Great leverage there. And the cool thing is BC can afford to do that. Even if he eventually gets pushed off the ball, you get enough sheep near your TC, plus you have deer right next to your town center, that forfeiting additional sheep doesn't lose you this matchup at all. Oh, this is so painful for Vortex. It's such a huge lead already for Beasty.
And this is why I was so puzzled about this choice for Vortex. This is Beasty's home map. Vortex said, look, I have the option to choose either one of my home maps or one of yours. He opted to go for Beasty's home map here, one of the strongest maps of Beasty. And it's also a mirror matchup where we all know how significant small differences can be. Now, Beasty generally hates mirror matchups, so that could be something in the favor of Vortex. But as you said, this is an uncomfortable start here for Vortex, with Beasty having access to that boar, and just his villagers being buffed by the Prelate on a very spectacular food source in Dark Age.
I don't want to be that guy that says it's over already. But I can't state enough how big the ball lead is at this point in the game. Like, there's a reason that most maps in the game do not have ball within a 10-second walk reach of your TC. Especially HRE that didn't have to walk long with the Prelate. This is, I mean, the tech timing, you see Vortex is going to be quicker on this, but it's actually deceitful. That's because he's gathering games, so he's gathering a lot more food before he's dropping it off. And this is going to pay for itself quickly. It's going to be Arcan opening. If this turns into a Castle Age rush, this could be a Burgrave game for Beasty. Because I think he should be a whole minute ahead of Vortex. What do you do at that stage?
Well, you say he's going to be a whole minute ahead, but Vortex is actually rushing up Feudal Age a lot quicker than Beasty. 8 villas on the Arcan Chapel as compared to 4. I am not so certain about that advantage for Beasty just yet. I agree the boar is huge, but on the other side, Vortex did have all the deer pushed in here. He's going to have the Arcan Chapel buff a lot quicker as well, meaning that every single villager he's going to have, including the gold miners, will be buffed by the Arcan Chapel, compared to Beasty, who's going to be a solid 30 seconds to probably not a minute, but 45 seconds behind.
Check that ball. It's got to be like half harvested already, close to. I don't think I'm smoking crack. Like actually, maybe that it's like 1400 already, right?
Maybe.
Okay, no, I was right. Like, this is ridiculous. Notice he didn't pull back to the Arcan because he's doing a slow build. This is optimized by Beasty. Sure, his tech up is slower, but he's getting so much more bank. He'll start walking back when the boar is at about 400 food. That means the village's buff will expire in time for the boar to expire. He'll hop in the Arcan, shift over to pushed in deer. He doesn't run out of runway as quickly as Vortex does here. Like, just, look at the numbers already. They do not lie. The food advantage for Beasty is going to put him close to a minute ahead in Castle Age timings.
Yeah, that food income per minute is very nice. And as you said, I think the bigger thing is sustainability. Vortix is depleting the safe food he has right now, whereas Beasty is yet to touch his deer. So even if the castlage times are identical, and we see a Burgrave Palace from both sides, let's say, Beasty is going to have all that safety inside his base, whereas for Vortix, he has depleted half of his available food already.
Tech up complete. I'm just looking at the numbers already. Just 478 compared to 313. He's going to walk over now. He's going to be forced back onto the deer, but then they're mirrored in terms of what they got access to. Sure, Beasty loses a little bit of time walking back without Wheelbarrow. It's not that grand in the scheme of things. He could have realistically got Wheelbarrow. It might have been worth it in this type of game. But you know, the worry for me is, like, is Vortix looking at this and thinking, do I have to do something off the cuff? Can I just play standard HRE here? Or am I just going to be too far behind? Get ugly. He already sees what the clear goal is, so scouts in place. I think they should both have their scouts in place. Where is Vortix's? Okay, so he's waddling around. He's not going to get eyeballs on. They just need the critical info. Is it going to be Burgrave? That's literally all that matters here. It decides everything.
Beasty's looking at that gold mine, waiting for a timing. He's actually checking how much gold is left, and based on that, he knows when Vortix has enough gold. Or, well, he can also see the villagers being pulled from the gold. But right now, even right now, he's got a good idea of how far Vortix is or how close Vortix is to castlage.
It's like chalk to how this is still going to work out so well for Beasty. Like, remember, he hasn't even idled the villagers yet. They're going to have to walk back. But here's the funny thing. The walk back could be the tech up. He could build Regnits on the northwest side of his TC and not lose efficiency there. Regnits is going to be the build for Vortix as expected. That's the info Beasty was waiting on. An immediate follow-up with the stables as well. Pullback should occur now for Beasty. He's not going to bring the ball workers back, but he is going to go for the Regnits of his own, retracted behind his TC.
Yeah, it's 8 versus 10. We have a stable coming up for Vortix already. I don't think Beasty scouted that, but I think when you look at the Regnits Cathedral, you should know that there is going to be a stable coming up and Lancers will be on the way.
This is going to be snaky. This is going to be snaky. They should both be moving out for that central relic. Beasty chose to build a second prelate to do so, though, which means he's going to miss out on the neutral relic here due to the timings.
Yeah, that second relic is actually delayed for Beasty compared to Vortix.
All right, who's older? Who needs to retire? Whose APM is not up to scratch? It's a click-a-thon, boys. Ready, set.
Set.
It's Vortix.
Go!
Oh, Beasty's old man. Look at his APM. He's a whole 10 seconds out. Oh, that does not feel good. That does not feel good. We'll at least get the Sacred Site, which is going to be some gold, but that is a big lead in a mirror match of getting the third relic.
Small differences make the mile, and you gotta credit Vortix for keeping pace with that castlage, in fact beating it. At the end of the day, don't forget, Beasty did have that boar, and it looks like Vortix will be able to secure the extra relics over Beasty. It's going to be 3 versus 2, that neutral relic falling into the hands of Vortix.
I kind of wonder if Beasty could have beaten to the punchline if he'd pulled the boar villagers and built the Regnits forward of his TC. I actually thought that was what he's going to do originally to kind of remain optimal with those villagers walking back. And it also would have put him closer because I think he pulled villagers from the deer. They would have walked about the same to get to that northwestern side. But players usually are pretty paranoid about that, right? The idea of putting your Regnits on the front side of your base. You know, we've all been there. We've had those bad experiences where it's the first building to go down and the game feels over.
Before the first night arrived, Vortix was delaying the Sacred Site for like half a minute with that scout. That was some lovely micro. And even now, Beasty isn't able to capture this because of those knights dancing around. Lovely move from Beasty to body block the knights away from the prelate, making sure that they cannot charge in. But Beasty is just not given any room in the middle right now.
Keep in mind also that Beasty sacrificed a villager to produce that second prelate, while Vortix, I don't think he did, right? He just waited for the Regnits to go up. Scout also going down. That's a big edge. Beasty playing quite a blind game now. Means that Vortix might be able to wiggle his way in around the back. I'm just looking at like the way this map spawned. Good thing for Beasty is there's not many penetration points at the back of his tree line. If you look by comparison, Vortix has a very uncomfortable layering there, where his gold vein is, where you could sneak around the back of the trees and catch him off guard on his gold.
Sustainability is an issue for Vortix, though. We talked about this. Beasty is still on his hunt, whereas Vortix is now starting to run low on available food. So that's going to be a point of concern, especially given that he's going very heavy on knights. He's dropping the third stable. Response from Beasty will be crossbows for now.
Not just that, he doesn't have great room around his Archon for farms, right? He's got a lot of natural resource points that are blocking the surrounder farms. And correct me if I'm wrong, did you not build the Archon right next to the TC, which invalidates like 4 spots? If we check Vortix's base, I'm pretty sure his Archon is rubbing with the TC. He's grinding on it like it's a techno rave. Yep. It's grinding for 20s there. That's not good long term, right? It means you can't be as efficient as Beasty. Nice little pick coming in here. Great from Vortix. We'll find one for his trouble. Remember, Beasty has got crossbows coming. Vortix is very one-dimensional with this Knight push that you already mentioned he doesn't have the food for long term. It's one bloody Knight. No wheelbarrow as well. Like, that's the other thing that makes this so frustrating, because you have to pull villagers even earlier, so you're missing out on those extra gathering raids.
Yeah, Beasty does have the Sacred Site countdown going for him, and you see he's banking up resources, food and gold. He's working his way towards Imperial and the Pass of Swabia. Once he gets there, it's going to be extremely difficult for Vortix to do eco damage. Every villager that's killed will be replaced instantly. Vortix needs to make something happen very quickly here.
It's really uncomfortable. He needs to take a fight fast before the crossbow count gets unmanageable. Great to force him off the Sacred Site. That is a huge deal there. That Sacred Site was creating an uncomfortable body blocker every time he moved left to right. So he wouldn't have been able to use these Knight Masters to get on top of the crossbows. But now he has an opportunity. To force a defense, Beasty will push him back. Still targeting that tech up. He's just trying to flirt that fine line between too greedy, just enough.
Yeah, Sacred Site will be decapped over here, but you see, Beasty is going to be on the way to Imperial. What is the response here for Vortix? You feel like he needs to just dive and do enough damage to make it very uncomfortable for Beast to recover, even with the Pass of Swabia.
It's so hard here, though, LidaKor. Like, look at what Beasty intentionally done with his houses. He built them on the left side of the TC. He's created all these weird choke points. It's the worst thing when you're trying to rush someone with Cav. Even the racks, dude. This is like Beasty. I mean, you can tell he was a StarCraft player. He's used to doing this type of thing. This guy played every Civ, so he played a bit of Terran. You need to make those walls out of buildings. Sure, that's not how it works in Area 4. You can't outright block, but you can make it harder for this many cavalry units to get in fast.
And it's the charge element. If you take away the charge from at least some of those knights, they become so less valuable.
Natural point. Wraps around, goes straight for the crossbows. Timing is going to be good enough. Wallow try and push him back. That's going to buy time against Vortix here. Tech up is going to complete. It cannot be denied. Vortix, he can't get in. The Wallows are holding him hostage here. Has to pull away for the second. Nightmask not really looking like it's good enough to end the game. And remember, that's Palace of Swabia. He can afford to lose villagers now. And the double garrison TC will clean up the remaining knights. Vortix throwing his body and soul at this, but it doesn't feel like it's enough.
Beasty held off so many knights with just 4 crossbows using those Vololos. He held those knights back. Knights could never hit the crossbows, and those crossbows did so much. Now, Beasty's eco is being shut down over here. He's basically fully idled, and more knights are coming.
It doesn't matter, LidaKor. He only is behind by 8 villages. Now, only is a big deal in a mirror. But so is an in-page advantage. Look at Vortix's bank. He ran out of food. He had to go farms. Beasty's a goddamn genius. The Wallow hostage in conjunction with the choke points. And he does that after he loses initial control on that Palisade choke point that was meant to be his strong arm. This is meant to be him in a bad position.
Beasty's in a terrible position. He doesn't have food to produce villagers with the Swabia. He ran out of food just in this very moment.
Oh no, you're right. Oh, Jesus, I didn't look at that. That's... All right. From genius move to maybe need to reset the brain there. It's getting late into the evening. I didn't clock the food. Thank you for that, LidaKor. And thank you, Vortix, for keeping this series alive. We were so focused on Vortix running out of food, we totally forgot that Beasty had ran dry.
That's the worst possible timing for Beasty. If he has 500 more food under that DC, he is probably winning this game. He just ran out in the very moment where he would have started using the Swabia, and he just had no food to start making villagers or any defensive forces with. Oh, what an unlucky timing for him, and what a clutch move from Vortix, really. Match point, dives in with the Knights, lives to see game number 4.
Oh, man. I need to restart after that one. I mean, it was an interesting idea. I just didn't clock the lack of. I thought there was still sheep in reserve, so my bad on that one, folks. Bloody hell, though. I mean, it felt like a damned one way or the other type sort of thing, right? Like if he can maybe kind of eke out a little bit of space, start dropping farms, you can see a way in which he can come back in. I wonder if like Elsback would have been feasible at all here. It feels
No,
bad to have to do that, right? But like, could that have been the saving grace?
I don't think so. Elsbach would have been a lot pricier, so he wouldn't even have been able to
True.
afford those extra knights and crossbows. It was just the fact that the knights came in, they did just enough damage to force all the villagers into the TC, and there was just no safe food available for Beasty to get 5 extra spearmen out that would have cleaned it up.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't know why I thought you had more food. Because like actually the interesting thing to think about, we did mention at the beginning, is that because he decided to pull the scout to the boar, he got less sheep, right? So that's like that's the knockback effect as the game goes on. And it's crazy to feel out the way that Vortix was able to stay in that, by the way. Like I want to give him a lot of credit because although there was a food gathering edge, he still came out ahead in the tech up. That was actually really impressive for him. I still think like for me it comes back to the decision to put the Regnets on the south side, maybe more so on the northwest side if I had to choose one moment. I think that extra time lost walking maybe put him behind. And as we saw, it meant that you didn't get the third relic in the center. And guys, I'm just going to say it. Clearly, he would have held if he had 3 Waller laws. You know, it's exactly what's going to.
Yeah, that was a lovely move. Like, there is just no other way of saying that. Being able to keep those knights back with the Vololos and then using the crossbows to pick them off, that was a lovely move from Beasty. It's just the fact that he goes Imperial, he didn't have the army to hold off the knights, and I think we didn't look at the berry positions. I think his berries were out in the open, so he couldn't just fall back to them. Vortix was probably able to shift towards his berries, and that gave him a little bit more of a sustainability over Beasty.
I wonder if I'd be curious what BC's thought on that was. Like, I'm thinking like maybe because you were behind on your timings, you can't actually outmass the Knights of Vortix that phase. Like when we begin Castle Age, what if he'd gone for spears instead? Because I love the crossbow plays. I originally thought he was going to try to park on the Sacred Site in Castle Age and use the fact that that's a choke point, right? Because it prevents melee units getting across to just kind of weave back and forth. Probably would have led to like some sort of archer counter from Vortix, but when you're that far behind in Knights, it also would have led to less drain on the deer, right? So then you get to this later phase in the game, you probably still got enough eco to push out 5 to 10 spears compared to the Knights you chose instead.
Looks like we're heading to Canal. Vortix just keeping his final home map selection for what could be a decider game in game number 5 if he gets there. Opts to go for the second home map selection of Beasty to play game number 4 on. And it looks like we're going to have the first showing of the Mongols over here on Canal.
I'm going to stand by it, folks. All right, genius and sanity is very close. But this is the thing we were anticipating, right? I mentioned that English couldn't come out of Mountain Clearing because Vortix was definitely saving it for this map. Mongols, I'm trying to think if there was another option available. English was, of course, removed, so like Mongols probably the most logical. Probably going to see a horseman opening from Beasty. Vortix should be able to move out straight away for the docks. But I'm glad to say, ladies and gentlemen, despite my brain in game number 3, Vortix a bit too big brain means we are going to be entertained for longer. Game 4 kicks off. Can Vortix take us to a 5th? Or is Beasty going to be able to recover and make it in 4?
English is a civilization that's just so difficult to deal with on this map. The longbows, as you always highlight, it gives you a land unit that's capable of sniping ships, unlike the archers of other civilizations. You have most of these fights focused around the river, so you can actually leverage the network of castles from a very early point. You have the option to play around Dark Age men-at-arms. Oftentimes, Feudal Age drags out, so you get a good value for longbows. You feel like there are so many things that just make English very powerful on this map. Mongols, on the other hand, they are a solid all-around civilization, but I wouldn't say that they are much better on Canal than they are on many other maps.
Yeah, this matchup, I think the English kind of just get forced to stay at home often because of the threat at the stables. But like the cool thing is because you're up against Mongols, they have to build stable plus Uvu, which means it's going to be delayed on one, and it's pricey on the other. So like compared to the Spearman opening, right? The Spearman opening would maybe make you pause or take second thought, but because of the difference in Horseman choice, you inherently always get your dock down as the English. The funny thing as well is like what you usually see as a follow-up in this matchup, you might remember we saw on loads of maps like Holy Island in the past, is that the response to the English, they can't build Spearmen, they have to go Men-at-Arms. That's a matchup that tends to favor the Mongols because they're able to easily outmaneuver those MAAs.
Yeah, that's a frustrating thing here in Dark Age. Obviously, it's an easy choice as well for the Mongols. They know fully well that you do not have the Spearman available in Dark Age for the English. And it looks like Vortix is going to have to play into some of those Men-at-Arms. Both sides will be investing into some costly units here, Horsemen as opposed to Men-at-Arms, but Beasty does have the benefit of the double production, and as such he's getting every second unit for free.
This is so annoying. The fact he actually had to pull a villager back like that, the idle time, the delay on the builds, this should be able to get Beasty up to 3 Horsemen, maybe pushing 4 before the first Men-at-Arms comes out. And then on the offensive, by the time the first one comes out, you should be able to like 3v1 him. This is a really bad position for Vortix to be in.
Yeah, Horseman now moving out. Big X already being torched down. There's a dog going on for Vortix. It does have a decent food eco. But look at this. Most of the sheep have been secured by Beasty here over Vortix. And the Horsemen are already coming out in large numbers. I don't know. I don't think the Men-at-Arms will be able to hold this.
It's the bait of having to go, like, being allowed to go for the dock like that, right? Like, because now you can't forfeit the ground, because if you ever forfeit the ground, the game is over, because not only have you failed with this Men-at-Arms opening, you'll also be paying Beasty for taking the territory from you, right? He burns them, he gets paid. It's why you have to buy time. The one edge you have is like, Beasty has to run across the map to get here, but there's these weird increments where he gets double production, so he can get ahead of you each time. This is very uncomfortable in this matchup, and Beasty, not comfortable just sitting back and burning Iraqs. He was trying to see if Vortix is being greedy. This is good news for Beasty, by the way. Because his opponent isn't the gold, it means that Vortix can only, at maximum, build 5 Men-at-Arms before tapping out.
The big thing here for Beasty, as you said, is that you get rewarded when you torch down those buildings. And so many times on this map, we see players forfeiting that dock with the English. Just saying, okay, I'll bail on this for now, and when I get to Feudal Age, I get that territory back, I rebuild the dock. It's something that you can afford a lot less in this matchup, because the Mongol player will benefit a lot more from torching it down.
Now on the gold, this timing for Beasty, he could do a lot of damage with this, right? He's up to 7 Horsemen in total. 4 of them are here. For Vortix, he only got enough for 1 additional Men-at-Arms. I'm getting a little bit worried here. So uncomfortable. And now the outpost also coming in. Men-at-Arms are trying to get here. If he body blocks with the Horseman, the villagers should be able to get it up. I think it's too late for that. So villager is going to be sacrificed to the great god Vortix. An outpost is starting to be torched down. But the scout going down can make this very uncomfortable for Vortix. This is not the type of situation where you can do without vision because the Horseman can jump you so quickly.
Yeah, Horseman getting
like this
good.
poor guy.
Look at that. Pinch on the Men-at-Arms, and when you can get some good surrounds like that, the melee armor of those Men-at-Arms are almost insignificant. A lot of those Men-at-Arms are taking some heavy damage over here.
And remember, like, it's that thing, even if you get Horsemen low, he can peel them back, he can keep them away from you at all times. It's not as easy to micro these Men-at-Arms. One easily going down there. Gold-wise, Vortix, if he's thinking of tech up, I think you need to think again. It's not feasible. And now this is enough Horsemen to burn down the racks, and Beasty is already on his way up. Remember, he still hasn't gone water, but he's going to get something valuable by getting this tech up. It's Silver Tree on a map with double trade posts at opposite ends.
And this is something that we see so frequently from Mongols here, especially against a slow civilization like the English. You are not really being contested on 80% of the map. You can get away with some very greedy trade oftentimes, and that's exactly what Beasty is working towards. In fact, it's not just the trade, it's the fact that he's been harassing that gold mine for so long that Vortix is still very far away from Feudal Age.
Yep, and he's going to go there again. Just dance the circles around the Men-at-Arms. Meanwhile, a second wave of Horsemen can build up that can start to come in and torch the racks behind you. It just splits your attention. already down to almost half HP. So, you know, you look away for a second, this could easily be set ablaze. And that's quite the stinger, because it's only racks you've got. In a situation like this where you're split as well, I mean, these berry patches also feel like they're working against you, right? Because you're going to just get trapped by them. Your charges are going to get interrupted. You're going to be a little bit slower. I don't know, man. I've got a feeling that Beasty may be a genius, LidaKor. for real.
You love going for that, but one thing is sure. He's got 13 horsemen. Those are to be upgraded to feudal age ones very soon. He's beating Vortix to feudal age by a mile, and until Vortix get to feudal age, he doesn't have the spearmen available with the English. Beasty's about to start trading, and Vortix has no mobility to prevent that.
Oh dear. 10 men at arms. I feel like you'd actually trade them in for half their value if you could. Horsemen charge in, villagers have to retreat, and look at the desperation. 12 committed to build this up, the rest to try and get on the gold. I don't think they can hang there either, though. I mean, this is desperation play. The galley is on the way. Beasty's going to look to move up river fast here. Horseman, not able to find those picks just yet. And he could actually just fight the men at arms at this stage because of the upgrades he's now got, because these are still baby at arms.
Oh, this is so problematic for Vortix, and, you know, there's a lot of debate when it comes to the lack of Dark Age Spearmen for the English, but that's the trade-off that you're getting for having men-at-arms available. It's something for something. English do have the men-at-arms, but that means that they do struggle against Dark Age Horsemen. That's frankly, the only civilization that has Dark Age Horsemen to work with are the Mongols. In a way, this was a counter-pick to the English.
Exactly, and it counters out this greed. There's so many fishing boats, only room to protect 3 of them here. If he commits to the burn, he can guarantee it's only 1 galley coming out. And in fact, this galley may find it hard to position itself in a way that it doesn't get hit by torches as well. He needs to be fast about it, though. Will come out now. He has to target the enemy galley. He's going to trap it in fact. Vortix being cheeky. But Doc has gone down, so you haven't got the assistance heal. You haven't got any fishing anymore. And now the horsemen, because of the attack on water, they can just take the one on land. The attack speed arrow only benefiting the Khan here. But it's good enough. Vortix, hold for the moment, but he needs to get a new dock up. Sends out 5 villagers to do so, but the galley is still not gone yet. Will go down. Luckily, no villagers lost yet with the second galley. No.
Vortix did a great job protecting the fishing boats, though. Now he's got his own galley. No! Villagers!
No, that's even worse! Oh my god! The side step wasn't even needed! They were gonna miss!
Oh my lord! That is a catastrophic loss there for Vortix. He still had the fishing boats alive. The ecos were neck and neck, but now the dock is denied. He cannot add more combat vessels. The fishing ships are still idle. He needs to pull more vills to finish this, but it's getting so painful for him.
He'll get it up, but it won't feel good. Actually, he might not even get it up. There's a Springald ship now. The archer ship's coming. The horsemen are running across. Villagers need to retreat. They're going to get picked again. And now, with this poor little Springald ship and 1 archer ship, that might be enough to hold the entire English army at bay. He rushes it up.
Oh no, man. I don't know, but I feel like everything is working against Vortix in this game at this point.
I'm done. I'm done. I'm literally on the floor right now, LidaKor. Is it over?
Oh my lord, he cancels the dock at 99%. Feels like waving the white flag at this point. Beasty's got completely unopposed trade. He's up by 8 eco. Well, as I'm saying unopposed trade, that is definitely an idle trader being eaten by a wolf.
It's Keshik's coming. I can't at this stage. I think it's fair to say that this is starting to look like curtains closed. Beasty pressuring back. It's the most defensive dock imaginable. If Vortix had just started with this one, he might be 8 villages better off. I think it was 8, right? 8 to get 1 dock up that didn't even go up. And now the Torture Boys are here. Remember, every time he burns these down, he's getting the payday.
It's 15 eco killed as opposed to 1. Vortix needs a miracle done by these men-at-arms and the longbows. He actually needs a miracle at this point. Luckily for him, if he loses this set, he's very much in competition still for the playoffs. But it would be a disappointing set for him nonetheless. 2 very swift strikes in the first 2 games by Beasty. Then Vortix turns it around in game number 3, but this game just kind of fell apart for Vortix quite early on.
It means he's likely to get that magic matchup we talked about, one that could potentially be rough for him. Vortix, the big Ura, needs to kill. That's okay, he only needs to kill like 10 villagers. I'll have to hope him a bit harder. He's been pushed off water for the final time. No way to get back on there now. He can at least block out the traders. That's at least one upside here. There's no trade for Beasty. Unless, of course, we're playing on a map which has 2 trade posts at opposite ends. And last time I checked, we are. So, trade continues to the south side. Meanwhile, the Horsemen are now prepping in Vortix's base. They time this right. They could pinch the wood line when Vortix isn't looking.
Yeah, now, if Vortix had a couple of spearmen supporting those frontline units, I would actually be pretty hopeful for him. You see, he's going for siege engineering, and he's shutting down this gold. He's actually pushed Beasty all the way back, and Beasty doesn't have a great food eco. In fact, Beasty's food eco is kind of disappointing, to say the least. But you need some spearmen, because the Keshik will clean this up eventually.
The Rams, Vortix, he knows he's on the clock to make this happen. Time is definitely not on his side, especially if a few more Keshiks get out. Remember, there's not a single spearman in play. Undermesh upgrade also coming in soon. Lombos really are the lifeline for Vortix. It's definitely getting bang for buck on the trade. And that TC being like it is.
That's big though. You see, Beasty's struggling for food, so double production would be very valuable for those Keshik. Losing the Ovu means that he's not going to have access to that for the next few moments. But as you said, spearmen are just so desperately lacking here for Vortix.
It's like the worst part is like you can't even landmark snipe him because he's the Mongols. You can deny him area in his own base, which is a big deal in Canal, but like you can't easily get the insta snipe, right? Because he can just pack up and walk away. That's what makes the Mongols so frustrating against these
but you know,
players.
you cannot run forever. If Beasty doesn't muster an army here, he can back up his whole base. He can run all he wants, but
he's coming
when
now.
is that going to stop?
The Horsemen are moving across the map right now. TC can tank for a while. It's got 7k HP, but Beasty very much on the clock. Remember, the military, it's deceitful. That is 3 archer ships and a springald ship. Beasty doesn't have a substantial army on land yet. Keshiks moving in now, forced to take the fight. He's got the undermesh to reduce the damage. Villagers also joining in on the party. Archers pushing forward, and Villagers now going to be pulled to deal with the Rams. The Horsemen, the Keshiks have arrived. Vortix now pushed back. Longbows without any sort of defense here. The Rams are going to be going down. That's 1,000 wood to be sacrificed. TC looks like it should stay alive. This army, not so much.
I hate to repeat myself. If Vortix had 3 spearmen here, this fight could have been so much more different. Now, Beasty's TC is on fire, but he's cleaning this up. Vortix is tapping out of this one. He tried a Hail Mary, but it didn't work.
It's just the genius of it. I don't know what else to tell you, LidaKor. Took an extra game. We didn't get a Stomperoo. I'm glad Vortix was able to fight back, but man, the way that this map was played by Beasty, the frustration around the Horseman spam, it's the awkwardness of that matchup. It's why Horseman is a go-to against the English, because you can never choose your fight with men-at-arms. They're too slow, right? And what made it worse is like the delay on going out on gold because he wants to go for fishing actually works against him. It makes sure that he never has a massive men-at-arms that can't be approached. It always puts BC in a confident position where he should keep numerical advantage, which is critical in the Horseman men-at-arms matchup.